All right, let's let everyone in. And I want to welcome you to day one of the Hear God Now event, which I'm so excited about this event. So, God prompted me to do this over a month ago, and I didn't really know why, but I just felt so convicted about it that God's people really needed to hear from God, really needed to understand His voice versus the media, versus your friends, your family, what's all the noise that's out there on social media, and to really just start distinguishing and discerning for yourself to hear from Him for your life, your relationships, your business, your buying behavior, what programs you join, what project you're going to do next, and what assignment He has for you now in this season. And I just think it's so important for us to rise up as God's people like never before. We need to rise up, we need to have influence in the marketplace. And so I'm so excited to have Michael Pink as my first guest here. He's amazing. I met Michael in the business realm. I came across him and was really intrigued. I was really intrigued when I saw him on my Facebook feed because I could see that he had got some quite unique insight into sales frameworks, negotiation frameworks, business frameworks, how to market Jesus' way. And he literally got them out of the Word of God based on God giving him revelation from the Word of God and also from nature, which is God's creation. So when you think about what Jesus taught in parables all the time was from nature, I can see now that that just makes complete sense that God would speak about business principles from nature as well. And so he's a business strategist, he's a best-selling author. He's written a number of books on these subjects, and he's the founder of something called the Jesus School of Business. And he combines biblical wisdom with natural law, as I said, and he's helped many entrepreneurs just to experience explosive business growth by using godly principles, by literally taking those principles out of the Word of God. So, welcome, Michael. So good to have you.
Oh, Sue, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. And I'm excited to see all these smiling faces. My goodness, we're in for a treat for the next week or two. It's going to be
We
awesome.
are.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are. So, so I want to start by, yeah, just we want to hear stories from you because we can learn so much from stories, and you've got some amazing, miraculous stories to tell. And we might have a bit of Q&A towards the end, Michael. I think that might be great if there's time for that. If people have some
Sure.
questions, it might be great to get some interaction going. And let's just start by letting us know where did you first start experiencing God's voice towards you for you in the marketplace?
Well, thank you for the question. It was back in the 1970s. I was a young copier salesman in British Columbia, Canada. And I had read in the book of James when it says, "If any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men liberally and upbraideth not. Don't be like a wave of the sea, tossed to and fro. Let him ask in faith, believing." And so I had been reading Proverbs, and I thought, man, I'd like to have some Proverbs. And I said, Lord, I would like wisdom. I want wisdom like Solomon. Can you give me wisdom like that? I actually wanted to have write Proverbs. I thought that would be a good thing. Like, just give me some nuggets like that. And I remember where I was the very first time that happened. I don't know exactly what year, it's probably 1978, around that time frame. He just gave me a proverb right there, then and there. And I wrote it down. It was, "In the valley of indecision lay the skeletal remains of many a worthy plan." I went, wow, that's that's good. What else you got? you know, and I began to catalog some of those things. And not that I had made any endeavor to write a book of Proverbs or anything, but over the years, you know, um, adversity and opportunity are joined at the hip. And that, yes, that's that. And I began to hear him, speak to me different things. But it wasn't just that. In that era, back in the 70s, I had three different visions. And I don't want to talk about it in some terms that makes it sound so ethereal and so whatever. It wasn't the result of a 40-day fast or anything like that. Back in the 70s, I was a very, I wasn't confident. I loved sales, but there was three things about sales I didn't like. I hated cold calling. I was afraid to present our product, demonstrate our equipment, which are copiers, to people. That made me very nervous. And the only other thing I didn't like about sales was asking for the order. But other than that, I loved it. Translation meant,
Only the
you
most
got it.
important part of sales.
Yeah. Making the contacts, doing the presentation, asking for the order. But everything else I loved, which was like driving around in my car and thinking I should go here or there. I don't know. But that was how I felt. And I was, very nervous about some of these things. And I remember at one time, where God spoke to me, showed me, I go into the office early and I was praying, just like trying to get the nerve for the day. Cause if I had a demonstration to more than 2 people of our equipment, I'd ask my boss if he would do it. And finally he said, no, you got to do this on your own. And I was like, oh no, there's going to be 3 people there. And so in that time frame in my life, Sue, I remember one time I'm just praying. I'm in my 20s and I see I refer to it as a movie clip, like a trailer, a movie trailer. You see these little ads for movies, like what it's going to be. It began to play in my head while I'm praying at the office, and it was a picture. It was a video of me on a stage in an arena speaking to more than 5,000 people, and it wasn't church. It was business people, and it was like, what? Oh no, I can't speak to 3 people, thousands of people. Oh God. Oh no, I don't, it wasn't something I aspired to. Now this is important because a lot of people aspire to things like that. Nothing wrong with that, but that wasn't me. I did not aspire to that at all. But I'm trying to remember how many years later, I think it was 28 years later, I was coming back from Panama, the country, back to Florida, and my administrator, when I got back, I touched bases. Hey, I've been out of the country for a week or 2, whatever it was. What's going on? She said, well, we got a call from Get Motivated Seminars, the largest seminar company in the world at the time. And they do these events with major speakers, U.S. presidents, big actors, different people. And Robert Schuller, Zig Ziglar, some of you know some of these guys. And will you speak at it? And she said, don't worry, I already told them yes. And so so the time comes, I was doing 2 in California, later 1 in Seattle, but the first one I did had about 2,000 people in it, and I did my thing, and I'd never done a group like that before. And the next one is a bigger arena, and it's packed, pretty full. And I'm backstage, and I asked the person who was attending to me, like, okay, you're next, kind of thing. I said, how many people are here? She said, there's about 5,500 people. And it was at that moment that I realized this was a fulfillment of exactly what I'd seen 28 years earlier, me standing in an arena speaking business. And I actually, I'll tell you, because you don't know me too well, some of the people here, I began to cry. I don't mean bawl, but just weeping, just like, I was so like, this is the thing I saw. But at the same time, I'm having that experience, this like, holy smokes, Jesus, you did this. I'm having that a moment. And then I hear them call my name and the curtain opens and I'm running on stage with thousands of people and pyrotechnics going off. And it was an interesting moment for sure. And it was the beginning of the fulfillment of that very thing. So, but at the time, you see, I didn't know, like, did I really hear from God or not? Well, that took decades to fill. But also during that time, now this one might be a little bit more controversial. But if I'm telling you the truth, I'm going to tell you it, but it's not to make a point per se. I'm just going to tell you what happened. Mm-hmm. It was 1979. I had just been promoted to sales manager. And I had $13. No, my bank account, was overdrawn. Now, when I say overdrawn, I had a a $300 overdraw allowance. In other words, they let you, if you wrote a check and it overdrew your account by $100 or $200, it didn't matter. It's like, it's just, no, they just charge you interest. So I had that. It wasn't like you'd be in default. That was part of the agreement. And I had a life insurance salesman come to my house this evening and want to sell me some life insurance, which I bought. Term life insurance, $50,000 policy, $13 a month. Pretty cheap. And I lived in a beautiful custom built home, drove a nice Lincoln. I'm in my early 20s. And he's looking at this gorgeous custom home and everything in the neighborhood. And he's saying, how did you do this? You're such a young man. And I don't remember what I said to him. But anyway, I wrote him a check for $13 and he left. And when I shut the door, I wept because I knew that that $13 check, if it wasn't for overdraft protection, would bounce. I didn't have money other than the overdraft. I went to bed that night and I woke up, I don't know, about 4 o'clock in the morning. Now that I'm a little older, a lot older, that's not so unusual, but it had never happened before. Some of you know, like, okay, now I'm waking up in the middle of the night. Back then, no, I slept like a baby. And I woke up, you know it, and I woke up at like at 4 o'clock in the morning and I got up and I said, why did I wake up? God, you must want to talk to me. Because I was stressed. And I said, what is it you want? And I went downstairs and I got my Bible and I said, Lord, speak to me. Now, I don't always hear him like this, but I heard him this day. He just told me to read Luke chapter 6, verse 38. Now, I did not know what it said. But I opened my Bible and it says, give and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, will men give unto your bosom. And I said, your solution for my financial stress is to give away money? Oh God, don't you have anything else in here? Like, is there another verse?
I hate it when he says that.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh. Now, this is in the 70s. You know, we didn't hear the term prosperity gospel, all that. I'm not going down that bandwagon. I'm just telling you what happened. Okay. Yeah. I don't now, and I certainly didn't then have any agenda. I just like, what is it? But when he said that, I said, well, how much and who? And he didn't answer me at that point. So I got to work. And in the morning, I was working with one of the salesmen who reported to me. And we were out making calls and doing a thing. And while we were working together, he said, Michael, I got to make a sale. I need $200. I got to pay my insurance. And if I don't have $200, I'm in so much trouble and we really got to get a sale. And I said, how much you need? $200. I said, great. I pulled my checkbook out. I wrote him a check for $200. He said, no. He said, I didn't want you to help me. I said, no. I'm giving you this $200. He said, I'll pay you back. I said, don't pay me back. You messed the whole thing up. This is a gift. Do not mess it up. And he thought I was nuts. We took the $200 and that was that. This is my first quarter as a sales manager. And I was working on a commission plan. I asked to be on straight commission. I didn't want a salary even as a manager. And so I was working on a commission structure that had a bonus structure of 1% bonus. But I had to hit like $250,000 in sales to get that 1% bonus. And I had 2 days left in the month and I was only at the $200,000 mark. So I was way, way short. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I went home and had dinner and I remembered something I needed at the office. I went back to the office that night and my boss was there and he said, look, this is your first quarter as a sales manager. I've decided I'm going to give you a 1% bonus no matter what. Now, at that point, I already had $200,000 banked. So I was getting a $2,000 bonus guaranteed on top of my normal commission structure. And it was like, wow. Well, I mentioned that to my wife after when that happened. I told her, oh, by the way, I gave Bill a couple $100 today. He's like, you did what? We need this. We need this. We need this. What are you doing? I said, that's what God said. And her attitude at the time was like, basically, don't ever do that again. And I said, watch this. This was not like some fluky thing. This was God. So I'm going to do it again tomorrow. I'm telling you, this was the Lord. So the next day, I'm thinking, who else? You know, what do I do? And so I'm with that same guy, Bill. And he said, Mike, I just want to thank you for the $200. I went down there to pay it. I was $100 short, but I sure do appreciate the 200. I said, great. Let me give you another $100. And then he said, no, no, no. I said, yes, 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 but you can't pay me back. You'll mess everything up. So he took the $100, and then I was out cold calling, and I was looking for people to give money to, and I called on a ministry, and they didn't need a copier. I said, but do you take donations? And they said, yeah. So I wrote them a check. Like, I'm just looking for ways to get rid of money and it's all on my overdraft. Okay. It's all on my overdraft, but nonetheless, that's what I was doing. And the next day I brought in, I had an order from a school board that went to me that earned me $10,000 in commission in the 70s. It's like,
Wow.
oh, now I haven't told that story in years because people have a bad, they think I'm trying to, like, I don't think God is a vending machine in the sky. I don't think you put $100 in, you bang on it until you get $10,000 out. I don't teach that. I'm just telling you what happened. Right.
It's about obedience. But
right.
like you say, Michael, it's about obedience. It's like you say, it's not about this is an ATM. It's obedience.
Yeah, Sue, you're absolutely spot on. And so that was like, holy smokes. And even you said, when did I first start hearing him in business? I realized just now, before that, this has to do with the same topic, but I was kind of new in sales. And I was in the month of August. In the previous 7 months, I had made just enough, hundreds of dollars every month. I mean, I was barely making it, right? And I was telling God, if you give me some money, I will cut you in like you've never been cut in. I mean, I promise you. And he said, you got it backwards. You got to plant the seed. And I said, but I don't have, but how much? And I went to a friend's house having a Bible study one night. I had some Christian counselors that were from California. I was living in British Columbia. They were young people, and they just finished wrapping up their time of service that they donated to the Lord, and they were going back to California. And everybody gathered around them at the end of the evening to pray for them. And they prayed, safe travels, bless them, whatever. But I'm thinking to myself, I bet you they need some money. Wish I had some. And I thought, well, what I could do is I could give them $100. And so I went to the guy's home, my friend's home, the owner. I said, listen, here's a check for $100 because I didn't have any cash. Can you give them $100 cash? I'm replacing it right now by giving you this check, but don't tell them it came from me. Just, I don't want to be known, but here's $100. It was like my last $100. It was very dear to me. $100 back in 1977 was a lot more than $100 is today. Can you relate? You know what I'm talking about, right? So, and I was a lot younger, so it was a big deal. So I gave him the $100, and then the next week, the last week of August, I had as many sales the last week of August as I had had the entire year up until that time. It's like, wow. And Sue, I'm glad you said what you said, because the last thing I want to say to people, it's like Bitcoin, you're going to buy it, it's going to go up, it works or whatever. No, it was about obedience. It's hearing God and doing what he said. And so back in the 70s, I began to do that. And if I may, does anybody, because I'm on a roll, anybody want to hear one more? Are we okay?
Oh,
I see some hands going up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Hey, Sandy, good to see you on the call. I didn't have my glasses on. Good to see you. And Tommy. Hi, Tommy. And Beth. A lot of people here that some of you I know. And you see. Yeah, Lois, I remember you. All right, and Chris, a lot of guys. Anyways, hello, everybody. So this one's pretty dramatic. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yes, go. Love it.
This is real life. I'd been in sales. I had been the manager. I had left that. I'd started a business. I thought, man, I'm good at sales. I can do business. Well, they're not quite the same thing. And I found myself that custom home I told you I had in that Lincoln. Well, I was in my nice custom home when the owner of the vehicle that I was making payments to of my Lincoln came and repossessed it. And then I lost my home, and I had no car and no home, and I was by myself, and I was sleeping on somebody else's sofa and borrowing somebody else's car. I'd buried my firstborn child. I had lost my marriage. It was about as dark as I could imagine it to be. I literally envied homeless people because I thought to myself, I owe $232,000. I'm that much underwater. And I presumed, probably wrongly, but I presumed you just have nothing. I'm $250,000 below nothing, and I have nothing. It's like, oh my gosh. And my partners filed for bankruptcy, but I thought, why would you do that? Think about this. If we stick through this, we're going to learn some very valuable lessons. If I file bankruptcy, I'm going to miss out on the lessons. I couldn't believe it. I said, why would you do this? To me, it was a $232,000 seminar or a course. And by golly, I was going to learn a few things. If I'm going to pay $250,000 back in the 70s for a course, I'm going to learn some things. And so I refused to take that route. I said, we're going to figure this thing out. Now, so this one day I'm sleeping on somebody else's sofa. And I used to have a townhouse and a custom home. I lost all of that. I was nothing. I had nothing. I'm sleeping on their sofa. I wake up in the morning early, I turn the TV on, and the 700 Club was on. Now, I wasn't, I didn't watch it. I didn't not like it or like it. That just wasn't part of my world, but I knew what it was. And so I kind of watching with one eye open, just waking up. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody like, okay, I'm just waking up and see what's on TV. Okay. And there it is. And I'm watching them. And all of a sudden, this happened. Listen up. This happened. I'm looking at the TV, and all of a sudden, instead of seeing who they were interviewing, I saw myself being interviewed on the TV screen, and I saw my name on the TV, on the screen. And I knew, of course, that wasn't there, but it was so real, it freaked me out. And I shut the TV off, and I got up and I went for a walk in the rain. Of course, that's, if you're going in British Columbia, that's kind of, if you're walking, you're probably walking in the rain. But anyway, especially in February. So I'm out walking in the rain, and I began to tell God how bad my life was, how I had all this, I had these problems, I owe this money, I've lost everything. Yet nothing. And I went on for like an hour just telling him. After an hour, he spoke to me as clear as I'm speaking to you right now. And he said, are you tired of feeling sorry for yourself? I was like, I was hoping for like a hug or something. Are you tired of feeling sorry for yourself? And then that was it. And I thought, well, oh gosh, well, what do I do with that? So the only thing I could think of to do, and this was in 1985, and I was thinking, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I'm going to pray for people who are worse off than me, if there are any. And so I began to pray for people I knew that were going through tough times. I ran out of them pretty quick. So then I started making up people. Lord, those missionaries in China, they got to have it rough. And the missionaries in Africa, they got to have it rough. Those people in prison, they got to have it rough. All the homeless people. And for an hour, because I said I'm going to give equal time. So I prayed for people. I made them up. I made up people. When I say I made them up, I mean, I didn't know anybody in jail, but I prayed for them. I didn't know anybody homeless, but I prayed for them. After an hour here, because I wanted to give equal time. Here's what happened after an hour, something very interesting. And anybody that's fighting depression, this will help you. When I turned my focus off of me onto other people, it lifted it off of me. I was like, I didn't feel depressed anymore. I didn't feel bad. But I said to God, okay, I feel better, but here's the question. Now listen to the words. I said, Lord, what about me? Will I ever be established again? And he spoke to me. He just said Second Chronicles 7:17. Now, most of us are familiar with Second Chronicles 7:14. My people who will call by my name will humble themselves and pray, so on. But I didn't know what 7:17 said, and I don't have my Bible open, and I'm going to paraphrase what it said. Basically, it said, if you will hearken unto the word of the Lord, and this is a word God gave to Solomon, if you'll hearken unto the word of the Lord and do what it says, verse 18 continues, then I will establish you. It actually began, verse 17 began in my Bible, and as for you, if you will do this and this and this, verse 18 continues, I will establish. And I was like, I said, what about me? Will I ever be established? And it says, and as for you, I will establish if you do this. And I held my Bible up in the rain and I said, God, I will do what it says to do and I will tell everybody about it. But here's the condition. You got to do what it says you do or I can't tell anybody. And when he got finished laughing at that, we struck a deal. We shook hands. Not literally. I'm just kidding. But, you know, I made, okay. Now, this is a bit of a longer story, but it's a beauty. It's a beaut, Clark. It's a beaut. So here's the deal. That day, I was aware of the fact, and it was on my mind, I need to make $1,000 badly. I need $1,000. That was what I knew I needed that day. Didn't know where it was going to come from. I had a couple of leads. I was selling financial services at the time. And so I headed out the door after that. And I went to my first prospect who was not expecting me. I showed up around 11:30 in the morning. I got there and said, hey, I'm here to talk about that. He threw me out of his building, out of his storefront, like I was a bad smell from out of town or something. I was like, get out of here. And it hurt my feelings. I thought we had some, he was like, get out of here. I said, man, that hurt. And so I thought, what am I going to do? And so I thought, I know what I'm going to do. And I was walking down the street. I'm in a retail area in Vancouver, British Columbia area. I'm in a retail area. And I see a family-owned, Christian-run business. And it's almost lunchtime. I thought, I'm going to go there and have a bit of lunch and figure out, like, what am I going to do to make some money? And I'm walking to this restaurant. And the Holy Spirit... And almost all my communication with God has been he's very much to the point. Think about it. Look at the stories Jesus tells, the parable of the sower, parable, anyone you want. He gets it told in like 2 verses. Me, I try to retell it. It takes me half an hour. You know? But he speaks quickly. So I'm walking to the restaurant and he just says to me, no. And I stopped for a second and I thought, I can't be the Lord. It's not like I'm doing something wrong. So I carried on and he said, no. And I stopped again. I thought, I'm not going to a beer joint. I'm not going to a honky tonk. I'm going to a Christian-owned family restaurant to have lunch. So I carried on. I put my hand on the door and I pushed it open to go in the restaurant. And he said, no. And I backed out the door and I thought, what in the world is this? What is wrong with me going to a Christian-owned, family-run business place for lunch? Like, I don't know why that would be wrong. I don't understand. So I walked back to my car and I drove from the town that I was in. Vancouver's a big city. There's a lot of suburbs and things like that. And so I drove from there back to kind of where I lived, in the area where I lived, which was probably a 30-minute drive or so. And I had to go across this big mile-long bridge called the Port Mann Bridge, crossing the Fraser River. And I'm going across that bridge, and I don't know where I'm going exactly. I'm going to have lunch someplace. And I said to God, and I didn't expect an answer. I said, any particular place you want me to eat? And he said, yeah, Chi-Chi's. Now, Chi-Chi's was a big box Mexican restaurant. I was not used to that fare. I was not partial to it. And I said, I don't want that kind of food. I want like something. I don't even know what I wanted, but I said, I didn't want that. But he didn't change his mind. He said, Chi-Chi's. So I said, okay. So I go, I know where it is, and I go to Chi-Chi's. I walk into the restaurant, and there's like a 20-minute wait. I turn around and said, that's it. I'm going someplace else. And I'm on my way to the car, and he says, no. Oh, gosh. This is crazy. So I turn around, I go back inside the restaurant, and she said, you want smoking or non-smoking? I said, I don't care. Whatever comes first. And he said, non-smoking. So when she came to get me to seat me, and I don't even know if I'm sane anymore. I don't know what's going on. And she came to seat me, and I get to the table. I said, is this smoking or non-smoking? And she said, well, this is the smoking section. I said, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to wait for non-smoking. And so finally it came available. And when she sat me down, is there anybody on this call that knows who Rick Osborne is? You see anybody know Rick Osborne?
Yes, I do.
Yes,
I
Rick
do.
Osborne
Love
is a good
Rick.
friend of mine. His books have sold like 10 million copies. I knew him before any of that.
Yes.
But
He's awesome.
he's awesome. And he was having lunch at that restaurant with a business partner. And he saw me. He said, Michael, oh, I want to talk to you. Can you wait till I'm finished my meeting? And I said, sure. And I thought he needed, he had a tax problem is what I was thinking I could solve. And I thought that's what it was. So I said, sure. So I'm at a table like just across from him, and he's finishing his meeting, which took a couple hours. But anyway, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And by the time I get to him, he gets to me, and I'm thinking, well, this is the $1,000 commission deal. This is the sale. This is what God brought me to. This is great. I sat down with him, and in like 2 minutes, I found out he did not have an income problem. Excuse me, a tax problem. He had an income problem. Like he was he was as broke as I was at that time. And I was like, oh God, you brought me here to sit down with a guy who couldn't buy lunch, let alone do something that's going to earn me $1,000. Oh, well, I'm here now. So I worked with him. Now this is important. This whole thing, right? So I said, what's the deal? He was negotiating a deal. I said, God has given me the ability to negotiate. I know a lot about it, and I'll help you. So I spent the weekend helping him craft a deal that he was negotiating with a publisher that they were at an impasse with. And he presented that to him on Monday, whatever day it was. And I said, whatever you do, don't tell the publisher who it is, because they're going to look at me and say, he's young. Don't tell him. So they didn't. And they went there, and they asked for they secured $35,000 cash advance and a $15,000 promissory note, and twice the royalty rate that the publisher had said he would agree to, but he did at that point. And so Rick calls me and says, hey, Michael, I need to meet with you. Can you meet up with me? Now, this whole time, because they said, how much you charge for this? I said, I'm doing it for free. God told me to come here. I'm not charging. But I'm telling God, I said, God, no, listen, guys, has anybody ever been broke? Anybody? Am I the only guy? Am I telling a story? There's a few of you. Oh, okay. So look I said to God during this time, I said, hey, when am I going to get some money? I need some money. And he said, and I did not have credit cards at the time. He said, when you run out, I will replace. And I'm thinking, can we maybe speed that part up? Like, why do I have to wait till I run out? That's like cutting it kind of close. So Rick asked me to meet him, in a particular town, like again, a suburb of the big city, at his either his lawyer or his accountant's office. He said, for whatever reason. So I went there, and as I'm driving there, I look at my gas gauge on my borrowed car, and the needle was on empty. So I pulled into a gas station, and I spent every penny I had on gas. And just so you know, I had $1.38. Gas was a couple bucks in Canadian gas was expensive. I didn't even get a whole gallon. And I just had coins. I paid the 10. I said, yeah, that's all. Like, you looked at me like, you bought 3/4 of a gallon of gas for your car? Yeah. I guess it didn't need it. Whatever. I don't know what I said. Like, I'm embarrassed. It's still on empty. And then Rick says, meet me back over in a place called White Rock, which was about a 30-minute drive. And I'm driving across the bridge. I'm looking at my needle, It's empty. And I got tears in my eyes. I mean, like, I got no money. I told him I'm working for free. My gas is on empty. I don't even know if I'm going to get there. And all of a sudden, I remembered God's promise. He said to me, when you run out, I will replace it. So I said, God, Lord, it's payday. I'm getting paid today. I got to be getting paid because I spent my last penny literally and I have nothing left, no credit, no nothing. It must be payday. I got excited. I got to where Rick was and Rick said, Michael, the Holy Spirit told us we're supposed to pay you. And he counted out $1,000 in cold hard cash.
You got your hello turned in?
I got my 100. I got it right there. Now listen, it gets better. So I get $1,000 in cash, which is, remember, that's what I said I needed. I get in my car and I drive to the highway, number 10 highway, and I go up the King George Highway, and it's a bit of a crest of a hill. I'm going the speed limit, 55 miles an hour, I guess. I'm cresting the hill, and as I crest the hill, I run out of gas. But I got momentum, so I go over the hill and I'm gliding on, and there's a gas station, and I had enough momentum to glide easily right up to the pump. And I rolled down my window. I handed him a $100 bill and I said, fill her up. Now, so that was the beginning of stuff. They asked me, because things went so well, they said, will you be the president of our company?
Drive your shift up that hill.
So they asked me to be the president of the company. I said, sure. So anyway, things were doing good. And I ended up coming down to the States, and I got married, and I'm living down here. And as time went on, I wrote a book called Selling Among Wolves. Maybe you can see that book back there. I wrote this book, Selling Among Wolves Without Joining the Pack. And the publisher asked me to come to the trade show in New Orleans because they were going to offer it to a lot of publishers, other bookstore owners. Now, just so you know, this was 16 years after the fact. 16 years later, I'm there. And, you know, I'd never been on the 700 Club or anything like that. The book is on display, and some women came up and they said, do you know, because I'm at the publisher's booth where they have all kinds of authors and their books on display. And this lady sees that particular book and she said, do you know who wrote that book? And she thought I was probably a salesperson for the publisher. I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I'm married to his wife. And it took her a few seconds, and then she realized what I was saying. And she said, what, basically, how do you have the credentials to write that book, you know? And so I told her, and she said, I'm the senior guest coordinator with the 700 Club. Would you be interested in doing an interview on our show? I said, well, yeah, I'd love to. As a matter of fact, and I didn't tell her this. God told me that, like, at that point, 16, 17 years earlier, or whatever it was. I didn't tell her that part. I said, yes, I'd love to do that. And so we booked a date for October. Okay, now, so October, whatever date it was, who knows? I don't know, the 15th, who cares? Sometime in October of 2001, I fly to or drive to wherever it is, Virginia Beach, 700 Club. They put me up in a hotel. I'm excited. This is the thing. This is going to happen. It's really going to happen. And the morning of, I get dressed. I put my suit on. I'm doing as best I can to do what I can with what I got. You know what I mean? And I'm getting ready. And the phone rings in the room, and it's the coordinator, the director, or whatever. She said, Michael, I'm sorry to tell you this, but there's been a violent uprising in Israel called the Intifada, and we're going to have to cut live to Israel with our partner over there. So we're not going to be able to do you live, but you're here. So we'll do the interview after the show's over, and we'll just air it tomorrow. Will that be okay? I said, well, sure, no problem. Whew. Well, the next day, so we do the interview and everything goes fine, and I leave. She calls me the next day and she said, oh, Michael, it's still a lot of tumult there. It'll be tomorrow. And then it'll be next week. It'll be next week. And then it'll be next month. And then it was next month. And then I didn't hear anything. And I kind of gave up. Now catch this. This is the story. So I'm doing a lot better financially now. But I had not owned a house. I'm married. She owned a house. We were married, all that, but I had never had a house in my name since I lost my homes. And now we moved down to Florida, and for the first time since I lost my home in the early 80s, my name was on it. I had signed this deal, and I'm buying this house, and we're closing on the deal. They changed the closing date. They moved it up a week, which I didn't care. I had the money, didn't matter. They closed. So we're closing the deal, and I go to the house I'm in right now. I go there, and I finally got my name on my own house again. This feels good. And the real estate agent comes over as the U-Haul is there, not U-Haul, United Van Lines, and they're unloading all my furniture and doing all that. And the real estate agent says, "Hey, Michael, my son says he saw you on TV today." I said, "Well, he sure didn't. I've been here all day. It's not happened." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm positive." He goes away. He comes back. He said, "Michael, I called my son. He said he saw you on TV today." I said, "Where does your son live?" He said, "Lives in Missouri." I said, "I've never done TV in Missouri." He's mistaken. He said, "He is not mistaken. He says he saw you." I said, "Okay." Then it occurred to me, I wonder if they finally aired the program. We unknew everything. Put the TV on, actually put the TV on a box in the master bedroom, plugged it in to the cable, and went to bed and turned the TV on. And turns out that night, that evening, they were showing a replay of the program they had run that morning. And I watched it. And would you believe it? The very thing that I'd seen at my lowest low, with me being interviewed on the 700 Club and my name at the bottom of the screen, was exactly what I watched in real time. On the day, don't misunderstand this. It's not about, oh, I was on TV. That's nothing. Not what I'm talking about. It was the day that I was established, the day that I took possession and moved into my home, the day that I was once again grounded. That day, they had to move the date earlier. They had to delay the program a couple of months, and it all landed on that day. And I was so unaware of it. I kept on saying, "It's not me. It's not me." I mean, people said they saw me on Good Morning America. I can tell you that was not me. but that's a pretty cool story, because God showed me that happening, and it took from 1985 to 2001. So that's 16 years. 16 years. So some of you, listen carefully, those that are catching this later especially, some of you have had a promise from God 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It was 25 or more years. I have to do the math on it. I can't remember. It might have been 28 years, something like that, from the time God showed me speaking to an arena with thousands of business people till when it happened. Don't let go. By the way, I didn't make it happen. I didn't say, okay, he showed me on the 700 Club, I'm going there, I'm going to try to get on that show. No, never did that. He just showed me what he was going to do. I didn't aspire for it. I didn't strive for it. The labor I did was the kind you see in Hebrews 3. Labor to enter the rest. And that is hard work, by the way. Especially if you're a do-it kind of person, like make it happen kind of guy. I'm that way. And there's a place for, putting your shoulder to the plow or whatever, but he did that. And in the interim time, in those decades in between, I could regale you. I don't know if I'd be finished in 11 days, but I don't think I'm the only guest for the next 11 days. So
you're not.
But
we'll have to have you back.
But I can tell you with a certainty, you asked me to go back to some of the beginning. The beginning. You want to know the real beginning? You guys want to know the real beginning? For me? I was 17 years old, not a Christian, not raised in a Christian home. And a friend of mine had his best friend lived in Alberta, Canada, which has a drinking age that was 18. whereas British Columbia was 19. And I thought maybe if we went to Alberta, a mere 650 miles away from where we lived, that I would be able to use my blood donor card, which only had my year of birth, not my month of birth, and pass it off for ID and be able to buy alcohol. I was a teenager. What do I know? I borrowed my mother's car. We drove across the Rocky Mountains, got to Calgary. We did those kinds of things. And it was my first time to really experiment with alcohol. And, you know, none of that's good. Then when the weekend was over, we had a deal between my friend and I. Whoever got the drunkest did not have to drive. Well, neither one of us wanted to drive. I won the bet. I was put in the back of the car, and we drove back, starting to go back across the Rocky Mountains. He pulled over to sleep. When he woke up, I woke up, whatever. I took over and I began to drive the car over across the Westway, another 400 or 500 miles to get home. And we're going over the Continental Divide. And I started getting tired. Now, by this time, we'd left 8 hours earlier. I was, as far as I know, I was completely sober. I was just tired. And we're driving across the Continental Divide, and I got tired. He was sound asleep. So I reclined my seat so that the top of my vision was like the top of the steering wheel and the space between the top of the steering wheel and the dash. That little bit, that was my line of sight. And I put, to get comfortable, it was my mother's car, a little Toyota, didn't go very fast. I put my heel of the foot at the top of the gas pedal, flat to the floor, because I was in a hurry to get back to go to a Smoke on the Water Deep Purple concert. Does anybody know that name at all? No? Deep Purple? Smoke on the Water. Anyway, that's where I was going to that. Some of you know. Some of you know. I don't want to be that old that nobody knows. But anyway, I'd never been to a rock concert, so I was on my way to go. And so anyway, I'm trying to drive fast, but get very comfortable. And I fell asleep on the Trans-Canada Highway, on the Continental Divide. The police, by the way, they entered the scene here, say I was going 85 miles an hour when I crossed the oncoming lane. Fortunately, nothing was coming. And I hit the gravel on the other side of the road, which woke me up. And when I opened my eyes, I was airborne, flying off the side of a mountain at 85 miles an hour. I hit the brakes. Turns out I didn't have air brakes. So it didn't do any good. And I'm looking, now listen, I'm looking at the trees as I'm passing them by. And I thought to myself, this is the first time I've ever flown. And I'm just gazing at this like, wow. And we're sailing through the air. And I'm just flying through the air. My friend is sound asleep. He has no idea that we're airborne going off the side of a mountain in the Continental Divide, in the Rockies. Well, he found out quick enough. Because when that car hit the first boulder, neither one of us had our seatbelts on. We began to flip end over end over end over end all the way down the mountain. I estimated a quarter of a mile. I don't know. It's about that going down the mountain. No seatbelts. We were like dice in a can, like this, just all the way down. I remember thinking, when is this going to stop? When is it going to stop? And just go going and going and going. Finally stopped. And he was crawling out of the car because every single window was gone. I mean, the car was completely, you can imagine, bouncing down the mountains. And he starts to crawl out, and he did something I always appreciated. He turned back to get me because we both thought the car was going to explode, because you've never seen a movie when a car goes off a cliff that doesn't explode, right? It always does.
Yeah. And
so we were like, it's going to blow. It didn't, but we thought it was going to because that's what they showed us. So anyway, he came to get me, and I was so thankful. And then I was okay. I was just disoriented. And we crawled out, hid behind a boulder, waiting for it to blow up. And when it didn't, we then had to make our way to the top of the mountain, top of the mountain, get back to the road. And then we had to hitchhike 18 miles back into town. Now, you couldn't see the car from the road. So we were just two guys that were awful looking. He had a cut on his eye and a cut on his chin. He was bloody. Not hurt really, but bloody. I didn't have a scratch. I didn't have a bruise. I didn't have a bang. I had nothing. We hitchhiked back to town, get him stitched up, and got a Greyhound bus to Vancouver. On the way back, we couldn't sit together because there weren't two seats together, so we had to split up, and I sat beside this old guy. I mean, he was old. He had to be 60, 65.
That's ancient.
Yeah. And I was still 17 years old. And I told them, hey, you wouldn't believe what happened. You tell the story. And he said to me, this really nice man said, God must have a plan for your life.
Mm.
And I thought two things. Number one is like, get me away from this religious nut. And the second thing I thought at the same time, what if it's true? What if God knows me? What if he's real? And what if he has a job, like he wants to hire me or something? Like, I didn't quite know what it meant. He has a plan for your life, but I figured it was some kind of job. And I mean, you know, people want to get a job working for prominent places. You can't get a better job than working for God. It's like I want that job, but I have to take the religion with it. I didn't really know how that worked out. And so we had a nice conversation, but as soon as the seats changed as a bus stopped at different places, I was able to sit with my friend, and that was that. A few weeks later, I'm dating this Christian girl, and I told her what happened. She said, "Oh, you know, God's got this plan for your life." And I've heard that before too. And so my buddy asked me, that flew over the cliff with me, he said, "How's it going with you and Bev?" is her name. And I said, "Hey, we're up till 2 in the morning. What do you think?" He's like, "We're doing great." Of course, I didn't tell him that we hadn't even kissed a little. We didn't even hold hands, because I said all she wants to do is talk about Jesus. You know, and I have a different agenda, but she's only, and that's it. It's just Jesus all the time. And he said to me this, and he was raised in a Pentecostal home. He was not a Christian. He hated religion. And he said, "Well, here's what you need to do." He said, "Don't listen to her. She believes all that crap. And don't listen to me, because I don't believe any of it. If you want to know the truth," and I was living with my parents at the time. They weren't home. He said, "When I leave your house, you go into your bedroom, close the door, get on your knees, ask God to forgive your sins, confess your sins and ask him to forgive you, and ask Jesus Christ to come into your heart. You'll find out." Translation, nothing's going to happen. And then he walked out of the door, went out the front door, and he turned around and he said the most important words I ever heard in my life. He said, "Above all, be sincere." And then he turned and walked away. And I thought, well, that makes sense. Okay, he doesn't believe it, and she does, and I might as well go straight to him. So I went in the room, went down the hall, got in the bedroom, closed the door, got on my knees. I didn't have to do it this way, but I just did what I was told. And and confess your sins. I thought, oh man, I don't know what qualifies as a sin. Well, I know when I told my parents that I was trying to avoid a deer, when in fact that was not what happened when I went off the cliff. I said, "Oh, I apologize." And I would think of something else. And every time I think of, I would say, "I apologize, I apologize, I apologize." And I didn't know what else to do. I just apologizing. And then I said, "You know, Jesus, would you come into my heart, please?" You know, I did that whole thing. And I did everything he said. And just like he said, absolutely nothing happened. But then I remember what he said. I don't like to remember it now because it's so emotionally good that it moves me to tears. But I remember looking up to heaven. I'm still on my knees. And I said, "Lord, or God, I'm sorry for living my life my way for me. I don't know who you are. And I don't know what you do, but whatever it is, would you do that for me now, please?" And it was like, now understand, I had zero expectation. In fact, I was told to expect nothing. But it was like somebody opened up a 45-gallon drum of water right above my head, and it opened up and it cascaded over me. I had my eyes closed. I thought it wasn't happening, but I thought I was actually lifting up in the air, going to go through the roof or something. I opened my eyes to catch myself, but I was still on my knees. I didn't understand what happened. And I was now crying, but joyful. And I couldn't understand, how can I feel so happy and be crying at the same time? I don't understand. And I don't know what you just did. And I got up from my knees and I ran out the bedroom, ran down the hall, ran out to the back porch. I had this overwhelming, inexplicable need to get in water. I'd never heard of water baptism. I didn't know what that was. And I was going to jump in the pool, but the problem was, not only did we not have a pool, we'd never had a pool. I didn't even have any friends who had a pool. I don't know what I was looking for. I came running back in the house and I went into the bathroom and I started filling the bathtub. I got to get in water, got to get in water, got to get in water. It was taking too long. So I plugged up the sink and I filled the sink and then I dunked my head in it and I just washed it and washed it over and over and over again. I baptized myself. I didn't know. I mean, I didn't do it like officially, but I never heard of it. That's essentially what I was doing. And the next day, 2 days later, I told Beverly, I said, I had this weird experience the other night. And she said, what happened? I told her. And she said, oh, praise the Lord, you're a Christian now. And I said, don't you ever call me that again. Because I didn't know what that meant. I thought she was saying, that means, okay, your weekends are shot. You got to be church on Sunday, youth group Friday night. Like, forget the weekend. It's over. In my mind, I'm thinking, he didn't say anything about youth group. He didn't say anything about church, nothing. We didn't have that conversation. So, but I was born again. I just didn't understand any of the terminology. And the very first, I'm now growing in my walk a little bit. I hadn't gone to church yet. I went to church. I got pulled over by the police for drag racing in a residential area. I don't know what the problem is. There wasn't anybody there. But the police took a very dim view of that. And I understand why now. But then I was like, what? There was nobody else on the street. And the cop said to me, you know, he wanted my license and registration. He was angry. He was yelling. There was 2 cops. They blocked us off. And my dad told me, son, don't worry about getting a ticket. Whatever they can do to you has got nothing compared to what I'm going to do to you. They don't have anything on you like I'll do. So don't worry about them. It's me you got to worry about. So when I prayed my second prayer and I said, God, if you will just make this a warning, I'll go to church. The cop came back and he smiled at me, handed me my license. He said, son, this is just a warning, but if I ever see you doing this again, I'm going to have to give you a ticket. Wow. I turned to the guy I was drag racing with. I said, do you know where we can go to church? And I went to church the next week, you know? And so I began, you know, I started to, you know, do that. And as I would go to church, you know, God was working in me, but the girl I told, you know, she went to Bible school 1,000 miles away. And I never saw her or heard from her again. I mean, it was gone. So I didn't have anybody to disciple me except for my drinking buddy that said, don't believe anything. And he's the only guy. And so we'd go to the river, get a case of beer or something like that. And I'd sit down and say, now tell me. And I had nothing but questions about God. And finally he said, quit asking me questions. He said, read your Bible. I said, I don't have a Bible. He said, everybody's got a Bible. It's in your house someplace. Look in the bookshelf on a guest room somewhere. Every house has a Bible. I don't think so, but I'll look. And you know what? There was one in the guest bedroom. And so a little while later, I'm in bed one night, and this is the first time I remember him speaking to me like this. I said, God, what am I supposed to do with temptation? I don't know what to do. He said, 1 Corinthians 10:13. I thought, what is that? I got up, went into the guest bedroom, opened it up, found there's a book called 1 Corinthians, turned to chapter 10, read verse 13, and it said, I'm paraphrasing slightly, there is no temptation come to you, but such as is common to man, and God will with that temptation make a way of escape. I went, holy Mac, he talks to you. He speaks. This is amazing. And that was the beginning of when I realized he will talk to you. And you see, now here's the problem, Sue. You asked me one question. I ain't stopped talking since then. And let me see.
I mean, that was just so rich. That was just so rich. Thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you, Sue. This is going to be a great thing. I hope I helped in some small way. And thank you to my friends that joined me on this call. Those of you know, I see some of you that I know, Sandy and others that I know. Good, Tommy. I'm just looking real quickly. And there's more faces that I can't see. So forgive me if I'm not calling out your name. But anyway, God bless you all. And Sue especially. This is going to be awesome, awesome, awesome. A meeting to invite the Holy Spirit to celebrate in him is amazing. God bless you. God bless everybody. Thank you for listening up to what I had to share. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, guys, wasn't that amazing? We're going to wrap up just in a few minutes. I just wanted to I wanted to highlight a couple of things. I'd love to hear in the chat some of the biggest takeaways. Some of the biggest takeaways. What was like really special for you? What were some things that really struck you? And I just wanted to pick up on one or two things before we finish, because I really felt like there was a touch of God. Well, there was a touch of God on pretty much all he said, but there were a few moments where I felt like it was really a message for us here, for people here. And one of them was, if you've had promises on your life and it's been 5 years, it's been 10 years, it's been 15 years, it's been 20 years, however long it is, I really felt that God wanted to encourage people here that he is a God of his promises. Whatever promises he's made on your life, you need to hold on to them. You need to stand in faith. You need to trust him that they will come to pass. And you don't know, you might be just on the edge of breakthrough. It might be just around the corner. So you heard Michael testify, and I can testify about this in my own life too. Things that God spoke to me about years and years and years before I saw the fulfillment of them. Sometimes we get this amazing word and we think, awesome, it's going to happen this year. And little do we know that he could be talking about something 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And I mean, none of us want it to be that way, but this is the reality of how God works. And yet he knows what he has for our life. He knows the perfect timing as well. So I want to encourage you with that. Whatever you have had promised over your life, do not give up. Do not give up. He is faithful. And I just want to thank you so much. So Cecilia said, just ask God, be sincere. Yeah, I love that. He's a God of promises. His timing is perfect. Yeah, those stories were just so incredible with regard to the timing and obedience and sowing. I loved his stories about giving and how God just came through for him financially. Just incredible. But it is about obedience. You know, God might say to you to invest that money. He might say to you to spend that money on something. It's not necessarily about, like you said, an ATM. You know, we put in this, and then we get 10 times out. It's about, what is he saying? What is he asking you to do? And this is my desire and my passion for this particular event, is that we will just really lean in to what God is saying for our lives, for our relationships, for our business, for our life. And so I'm so excited to see you tomorrow. I have a wonderful prophetic consultant joining us tomorrow. Who knows? We might have some people prophesied over. God may speak to individuals tomorrow. We'll wait and see, but I'm expectant, and I hope you will join us again live tomorrow. If not, please watch the replay. Replays will be sent out, and this is just day one, guys. This is just day one, and who knows what is next. So I will see you again soon. And hey, Jackie, good to see you. So good to see so many familiar faces as well. Jackie, Nancy, I see you. Hi, Beth, Marina, Cecilia, Liz. I see so many familiar faces. Lois, Amy, good to see you. Okay, I will see you tomorrow. That's it, guys. See you again tomorrow.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
See you tomorrow. Bye. Good